I'm TJ McClellan. I'm the broker of Fitness Realty. This is going to be a fun episode or a fun video with me and Spencer. And we're going to just be talking about how the home buying process works. It's going to be completely off the cuff. There is no script. And none of the questions have been put out there at all. This is going to be totally off the cuff and fun. So hopefully we have a good time, and hopefully we get through some good material. So I wanted to welcome Spencer. Thank you so much for being on this with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's going to be good. So since we're going to talk about home buying, what is the first thing that you have heard of on the internet or in the narrative? What is the narrative kind of speaking about with home buyers right now?
Rates are high. I know that, or I think I know that.
Yep.
I have never owned a home, never bought a home. I wanted to, but just timing hasn't worked out. So yeah, I've heard rates are high. You know, it's a good time to sell is what I've heard. Not a great time to buy. I don't know. I don't know what your opinion is.
Yeah.
But that's what I've heard.
So that part's really good. The narrative out there is really talking to buyers and telling them that it's not a great time to buy. And a lot of that is the uncertainty in the market. You know, the interest rates are high. So you keyed in on that like specifically and perfectly.
Okay.
Historically, they're not as high as they've ever been.
Yeah.
But in contrast, when we go from like low twos to like mid sevens, and then now we're like high sixes ish.
Feels high.
That's high,
Yeah.
right? You can't triple something and say, oh, that's normal, right? Where there's a lot of people that have been in the market in the past where, you know, maybe they're older than 40 and they realize, or they have had parents that have bought homes that were way higher in interest rate.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people that are like, don't worry about that. It's not that high.
Right.
But in perspective, if you're young, you only realize and know 2% or 3%.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now that it's 6 or whatever, then everybody's freaking out, right? So you are right. The narrative and the market and the media is really pumping. Like home ownership is hard.
Yeah.
Buyers are in trouble. It's super impossible, right? And so we're going to kind of dive into that because, in my opinion, it's always a great time to buy. There's a lot of things with real estate where if you are in a position to buy, that's a great time. It's hard to time the market, but time in the market is amazing with real estate.
Okay.
85% of the world's millionaires have done that with real estate. And so sometimes when I hear the narrative or the media like shying away from real estate, I get super pissed because I'm like, well, you're going to take away the American dream from that person.
Yeah.
And wealth building in America is done in real estate very easily. Now, obviously, like we know, markets go up, markets go down. If you were in the stock market goes up, stock market goes down. But the rules for leverage for a first-time home buyer, especially in your case, being a first-time home buyer, are exponentially better than the stock market.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of dive into that. So first thing I want to talk about is with the interest rate. So right now, if we were to get you an interest rate and locked in, let's say it's like low sevens.
Okay.
You know, there's a lot of things that go into that where we've had lenders on before that could really speak to how credit works and longevity of credit, how the interest rate works, the bottom line payment, down payment assistance programs, all sorts of stuff. The thing that I really want to key in on is that with an interest rate that's pretty high and the payment and how that feels, the thing that I want everybody to realize, and especially with new buyers, is that you're only dating the rate. You're actually not marrying that rate.
Right.
Because if rates come down, then you get to refi, right? Which is incredible. So that's a huge benefit for every first-time home buyer to know and to understand that in this market, all the prices are kind of, they're a little bit subdued. And what I mean by that is that with interest rates at 7 or whatever roughly, they're not shooting up like they were. So in a position right now, if we were to lock you into a house and get you into that house, you're marrying the house, right? You're going to be there hopefully a little while so that you can build up that equity. But if rates come down, you can refi.
Yeah.
The problem is a lot of people right now are like, oh, I got to wait. I got to wait for the market to either correct or for the interest rates to come down.
Yeah.
When the interest rates come down, I've been told, and this is a stat from another lender that's a really big lender, has a ton of data and people on his staff, and his name's Josh Metal. his staff did some data that every 1% the interest rates come down, 1 million new buyers nationwide become eligible to purchase a home.
Oh, wow.
Right? And so in our market, I don't know what that really equates to. Maybe it's 5,000. Who knows?
Yeah.
Like based on population growth and everything like that. But that amount of pressure will push prices up. Well, now you can't change the price of what you got to go buy. The only thing you can really adjust is the rate to do a refi. So if everything comes down, let's say interest rates come down 1%, most likely all the prices are going to go up 50 to 100 grand.
Okay.
Which is outrageous.
Yeah.
But that's Utah. Like everybody knows that's Utah. That's what it looks like. We're mini LA now, mini California, if you want to say it like that. But the thing is, if we get you into a house and let's say you lock up at $500,000 and then the rates come down, you can do a nice cushy refi.
Yeah.
Your neighbor that buys the house 1 year after you has another 100 grand to burn down because that price just shot up. And that's another 100 grand that's sitting in equity for you later on down the road because you started early.
Okay.
So that's kind of it in a nutshell in the interest rate and the Utah market specifically. But now I want to kind of switch gears to, let's talk about the actual needs of just you and your family and kind of talk about what that looks like for what you'd like. So kind of walk me through what your needs would be for a home that you want to buy. And if you've watched like House Hunters or something, it looks similar to that. So how many bedrooms do you think? Garage, whatever.
Yeah. We'd love, we would love a single family home at some point. Get a little bit more space. Fenced in yard for the dog would be great.
Nice.
Probably like no less than 3 bedrooms with our family situation, like kids and stuff that we have, but ideally like 4. And then... I don't know. What else did you ask?
Yeah, that's a really good start. So when I'm talking to buyers, I love to kind of just say, what are the things you really are looking for? Yeah. So we kind of hit on that. Fenced in yard, single family house, 3 bedrooms, right?
Yeah, 3 to 4, yeah.
So 3 to 4 bedrooms. Bathroom counts is something that usually the wives will know more about, right?
Yeah, it doesn't affect me as much. I just want it so it's like we have our own, kids have their own, and there's like a guest. So maybe like a 3 or like 2.5 or whatever.
Okay, exactly. This is the funny thing. So I want to make sure that everybody is clear. Sometimes if you're working with a brand new buyer, if both parties aren't in the same room at the same time when you're asking all these questions, if it's possible to get them both together, then it works way, way better. Yeah. Especially if it's a husband and wife, because husbands and wives, they operate really well together, obviously, but they both have really different things they're looking for.
Yeah.
And so what we've heard from Spencer is really good. Like these are the things that are top of mind for him. The cool thing that I like to do is I would now like show you on the MLS, go through like a presentation about kind of what homes are out there, what's available, and kind of walk through the MLS process and the home search process.
Yeah.
The cool thing that I like to do is that with new buyers, I love to show a bunch of homes. So we would get about 10 to 15 homes that fit the criteria or close to it about what you're looking for. And then we'd go see some of them. Because the cool thing is every time we take a buyer out to see a bunch of homes, the chances of you finding the perfect home on the first house is like virtually impossible.
Yeah.
It does happen. I've done it several times, but it's pretty rare. But the thing is, you'll start to see things that you're like, oh yeah, this is the house that we are looking for, or these are the features. And then something else that I always ask after we're done looking at a house is, what was the thing that you hated?
Yeah.
Because it's easy for humans in general to pick out the thing we hate. Like, you can just, boom, I hated that. Like something somebody always says is like if somebody has a certain tell or a thing they always do, and then you say what that is to somebody, and it's like that like sound, and then you're like, oh, I just see it everywhere, right? Yeah. So if it's like nasty hardwood floors or some pink linoleum or something, and you hate that stuff, and then somebody like mentions pink linoleum, and you're like, I hate that stuff. So it's easy for humans just in general to pick out the thing we hate. So sometimes when I'm walking a home, like let's say we were out with you and your wife and we were walking homes and you're like, man, I loved this one, but it only was fenced in the backyard or whatever, then I would know, all right, let me go to the MLS. I just punch that in, put the search criteria, and change that. So that's kind of the search process. So like for everybody that might be watching this, the searching process for me looks a little like HGTV House Hunters, where we're really asking like, how many bedrooms are you looking for? What's the square footage like? Fenced in yard. There's RV parking. Our MLS probably has about 250 different options that you can kind of scroll through for homes. Some of them are really down in the weeds, so I usually leave the criteria pretty wide open and then just go see some homes. So for everybody watching this, like I said, that's kind of the way that I would run the search criteria. So now I want to kind of switch gears into what it looks like for the contract process.
Okay.
So obviously you've done contracts in the past. I mean, you've bought a car before, I'm sure. You've seen what contracts look like. This isn't going to be like new or anything, but the real estate purchase contract has a few things that I always love to walk a buyer through. And the main reason that we really love to walk through with a buyer, and especially a first-time home buyer, is, in my opinion, as a realtor, my job is to help educate you. And I want you to feel like you got the most education you could possibly get about buying a home to feel the most comfortable and make the best choice for you and your family.
Yeah.
There's a lot of realtors out there that don't educate to the level that I think we should. And a lot of that's either a lack of interest, motivation. They might not know the contract as good as they could possibly know it.
Yeah.
Or they just feel like they might be inadequate to teach that. But in my opinion, that education goes a long way. So let's talk about the contract. This is one of my favorite topics to get on the subject about. So through the home buying process, of course, now we've kind of covered like interest rate. We would have gotten a little pre-approval letter so that we could say, hey, this is $500,000 we're shopping for or whatever. I'm going to hit one key thing there really fast, though. Sometimes I take buyers out and show homes before a pre-approval letter.
Gotcha.
And some of that is because, you might not feel like it's real yet.
Yeah.
Or you might not feel like, interested to talk to a lender and tell them all your secrets about finances, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes that's scary.
It is, yeah.
I'm sure you've felt sometimes in the past, and you can probably tell me a yes or no, but sometimes when people talk about finances, you're just like, oh no, I'm gonna hold on to that. What does that feel like for you?
Yeah, it just depends on who I'm talking to, but yeah, I totally feel that. A little insecure sometimes, or like maybe you don't want to be judged, or compared to other people. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And sometimes like at work or things, we never talk about finances. It's always one of those like finances, politics, and religion are kind of like no nonsense well, I shouldn't say no nonsense. They're like the hands-off subjects.
All nonsense.
Yeah.
No talk.
Yeah, there we go. It's all nonsense topics. You don't want to touch any of those, right? But sadly with finances, I wish more education would happen.
Yeah,
right?
For sure. Because
a lot of times in finances, we always kind of feel like, where am I gauging, where do I rack and stack with other people? But if we just educate, because there's millions of people on this planet that are doing really, really fabulous with their finances. And so like, if we're just sitting in this room talking, like, we're not gauging where we're at or trying to like see where we're, racked and stacked. So I like educating. So anyway, on that piece though, I was going to say, sometimes I'll show homes before. Yeah. Because then you'll get excited enough to talk to the lender and get a pre-approval letter.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So sometimes, like, if you had an idea in your mind and you were like, oh, I want to go see $2 million homes. Okay, well, $2 million homes typically need a pre-approval letter just to see the home, just to get an appointment. But there's plenty of vacant homes that are right around 400 to 800,000 all over the valley that we could go and see, tour, until you get excited enough to talk to a lender and get that pre-approval letter. Yeah. So in this instance, sometimes, like I said, I would just take you out and show you homes. Then you get excited, talk to a lender.
Gotcha.
All right. So kind of in the whole thing of how this works, we get pre-approved, or I show you homes, then you get pre-approved. We kind of get that search criteria, which, just to be honest with you, changes. Yeah. Right? As you see homes, it'll flex, it'll change. As we see your price point, that might flex and change. I've had a lot of people in the past that could get pre-approved for a certain price, and when they realize that price is like down here where they thought, then they have to start making some sacrifices, right? Maybe it's location, maybe it's bedroom count, maybe it's a smaller house. Sometimes it might be a townhouse, things like that. So pre-approval, search criteria. Then let's say we found the perfect home. Now we found your like dream home. Well, it's probably going to be Michaela's dream home.
Probably.
Yeah. But anyway, so most of the time the wife like will really have a lot of things to say about the house.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's say we found the dream house. Now the contract process. This is kind of the fun process for me.
Yeah.
A lot of times as a realtor, we're really educating, like I already said, but that education is to help keep you legal and help protect your earnest money.
Okay.
So there's a few things for the contract. I'm going to kind of gloss over a few of the details and then let me know what kind of stands out to you as maybe the best piece of that. So first thing, and I kind of already mentioned it, was earnest money.
Yeah.
So typically for earnest money, everybody kind of has to put something down. In this country, it could be a handshake. It could be the keys to a car. It has to be some type of valuable thing. But it's usually just cash, right? It's usually cash. We're putting it on the table. Or we're putting it in an escrow account, right? I'm not saying we're putting it on this table or anything, because it has to go to a trust account that either a realtor like myself or a broker controls, or a title company.
Okay.
So in this country or in this state, typically the range is from about $500 is like the bare minimum to put on the table as earnest money.
Okay.
But it can go all the way to 1% to be like normal-ish.
Okay.
But it could actually be as high as you could possibly want it. Yeah. So the thing about earnest money is all you have to think in your mind is, this is the money that I'm serious with. It has to be enough to get the seller excited to say, yep, I want to take it off the market and work with you. It has to be big enough where you can actually hold them to the contract as well. And it has to be big enough for the sellers to even take you serious.
Yeah.
So in those ranges, let's say $1,000 minimum up to 1% is about the norm. So let's say we're at a $500,000 house. That's $5,000. That's earnest money.
Okay.
Now, a lot of times people say, well, I'm not really ready to put up $5,000. Okay. Yeah. Every buyer gets to pick. So maybe you want to do $2,000. Yeah. So then you could say, all right, we want to do $2,000. Here's my check. Goes into the trust account, sits there and collects dust while we go through this process. Yeah. The earnest money really is the locking piece to the contract, right? It kind of binds everybody. The written contract obviously does the binding, but the earnest money is really what people are interested in if somebody breaches the contract. Yeah. There's plenty of ways to breach the contract, and across Utah alone, there's so many lawsuits out there right now with the contract, which is crazy, right? Yeah. As a realtor like me, I'm trying to really educate you so that you don't walk into one of those breaches, because that's really bad. Yeah. Bad for everybody. All right, let's take $2,000 though. Let's just say that's what we're going to use for earnest money. Okay. So that $2,000 is going to be on the table, up for grabs if either party breaches the contract. Okay. So then also in the contract, there's going to be plenty of things that we'd be putting in there, like we want the swing set in the back, right? Like for kids, that's like a must. Yeah. Or there's a trampoline in the back.
Or like appliances and stuff.
Yep. Gotcha. All the appliances, we'd say yes to this, no to that. Sellers also kind of dictate some of that off the MLS as well. Yeah. Then we kind of go through a bunch of other things in the contract that are just like gee whiz information about how to breach the contract. And those are topics that I'd kind of go through on another time. But there's deadlines that I really want to hit in here. So there's a few deadlines that we really want to talk about. So let's talk about due diligence first. Okay. So there's a due diligence deadline. Yep. Due diligence deadline is the thing that is a golden protective bubble for you. Think of it like a shield, I guess. Mm-hmm. So due diligence is a time frame from the contract start date, which would be when both sides agree to the contract terms, right? Like everybody's on board with it, we sign, everybody's good with the contract, that's the contract start date. Okay. So from the start date to the due diligence deadline is like a big golden bubble for you. So I'm sure you've heard of a home inspection, right? Mm-hmm. have you heard of any other type of inspections that people do for any other type of property?
Not inspections. I know like the appraisal and stuff like that. So
perfect. Yeah. Appraisal is a great one.
Okay.
So during due diligence, we're doing the home inspection, and then there's about 30 something other items that are off of a due diligence checklist.
Okay.
That we kind of, as a realtor, for me, I usually hand that to every buyer and say, here's all the things that you could do. You don't have to do them all. You don't have to do any of them at all.
Yeah.
You could do every one of them, which would cost a freight train of money. So you don't want to do that. You want to pick the ones that are specific to the property and specific to the things that make you feel comfortable.
Right.
A few of those off of the top of my head. Home inspections, like number one, we really want to see what the home looks like.
Yeah.
You could do a radon inspection, a meth test, are like the three majors just for every home out there. And then that kind of gets into the weeds beyond that. So like drive times, obviously, work area, obviously. You could check the sex offender list. You could be checking crime reports. There's a lot of things that everybody has to do to make sure it's the home for you.
Yeah.
So in my opinion, when I'm looking at the due diligence deadline, let's say it's 10 days. That's about the norm, the industry norm. So for those 10 days, I'm like prompting you and saying, okay, we're in due diligence right now. Have you scheduled a home inspection? If you want to schedule it yourself, typically I'm helping you schedule all of that stuff. But if you knew a home inspector and you wanted to really use them, we could do it that way.
Yeah.
Typically nobody really knows a home inspector.
Yeah.
So then we just hire the one that we normally use. His name's Blaine Henson. He's super good, and he's very thorough and very kind of OCD about all the details.
That's good.
Which is great, right? It's great for a homeowner or a first-time home buyer to get peace of mind.
Yeah.
So during that due diligence time, though, I'm like, hey, Spencer, like, is this the house?
Yeah.
Are you sure you want this house?
Yeah.
Did you sleep on it at least a few nights? You know, did you consult with your wife? Like, hey, is this really the one we want? Are we ready to spend $500,000 or $600,000 or whatever the case is?
Yeah.
And I'm usually asking you that all the way through due diligence just to make sure that you are really making sure it's the house for you.
Yeah.
Because you could literally roll over one night and like have a thought, just that's not the house.
Yeah.
Or this happens more frequently. Your wife will be like, I'm getting bad feelings, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it's cold feet, you know, like it's expensive, it's big, it's a big purchase. Totally get that. But sometimes it really is a bad feeling. Like maybe this isn't the house, not the neighborhood, not the right time or whatever.
Yeah.
If you have one of those experiences, or we find like the home inspector found the foundations crumbling or whatever. Okay, then we can cancel the contract within that due diligence deadline with one sheet of paper, your signature and your wife's signature, boom, contract's canceled. You get to keep your earnest money.
Sweet.
No problem. The only thing that you're out is the home inspection money.
Yeah.
You know, because that you have to pay for it out of pocket. Radon test if we did one, meth test if we did one, right? Okay. Any money you spent during due diligence, obviously that's kind of it's
gone. Yeah.
It's just cost, right?
Yeah.
But you'd get to keep your earnest money. So let's say we locked up a home for $10,000 for your earnest money, and you were like, 10,000's a lot, right? Most people don't walk away from 10,000 just on willy-nilly stuff, right? And so if it wasn't the correct house, we just walk away, get your earnest money back, start on the next house, or it just changes though.
Yeah.
Get your earnest money back, no problem.
Okay.
Now, there's another deadline that's called financing and appraisal, and this is the appraisal piece. So obviously, every loan that gets submitted and gets put under contract to get into a house, that loan has to have an appraisal done so that the bank knows that it's being protected.
Right.
Sadly, the people that have the money make the rules, and those are the banks. And so the banks make the rules. The government has done a pretty good job to protect the consumer from like mortgage fraud and all sorts of mortgage stuff that was really dangerous. And so during that, though, there's still an appraisal that gets done to protect the bank. So let's say, just hypothetically, we're getting a $500,000 house. We're going to put $100,000 down. So now you're financing $400,000. So that financed $400,000 all we have to do is make sure that the home comes in at $500,000 or more, and then they're ready to do the loan. The bank will do the loan.
Okay.
If it comes back a little low, at let's say it's $495,000, if the home comes back a little low at $495,000, then there's some wiggle room and some negotiation that can get done if you are putting that $100,000 down.
Yeah.
Now, typically, first-time home buyers don't have $100,000 to put down. So if we're not into that first-time home buyer with $100K down, which I've never had a buyer that did that.
Okay.
That was a first-time home buyer. So in most cases with first-time home buyers, there's programs for FHA loans where you'd be 3.5% down. Now, if that's the case, there's not a lot of wiggle room, right? Because that amount of money that's there that you're putting as down payment is pretty tiny.
Yeah.
Comparative to the large amount of loan.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, all we have to do is make sure that the appraisal comes in over the contract price.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of buyers feel like, and this you might have seen friends that have been in this position when they get into their appraisal, they get kind of nervous, right? Like, if it doesn't appraise, then we might not get the house. That's not always the case. Then there's negotiation.
Okay.
But then also some buyers will feel like, well, if it appraises for too much, then I don't want to pay extra.
Right.
That's not how it works either.
Okay.
So let's say $500,000, the appraiser goes out and it's worth $600,000. That'd be a great day. Obviously, to put another $100,000 in equity in your pocket would be beautiful. Yeah. The appraiser is just going to look at that and say, contract price $500,000, home's worth $600,000. They'll write the contract or the appraisal for typically about $1,000 more than the contract price.
Okay.
So maybe $501. Now, if it is worth $600,000, nobody's going to really know that because nobody wrote it down, right?
Okay.
But the appraiser just does whatever the bank needs to make the documents good so you can close.
Gotcha.
At the end of the day, appraisers only care about protecting the bank. That's it. So if the contract price is $500,000 and it's worth more, they just write it for a little bit more than the contract. I've seen them hit it right on the nose, which is funny. Like give us a little wiggle room, that'd be nice, but whatever. Just the name of the game. I have seen appraisals come back low, and I know I've told you before the home that we were gonna buy, that was the other home, that one came back $25,000 low.
Wow. I
was not gonna pay extra, right? Yeah. So we went to negotiate.
Okay.
And I was in my financing and appraisal deadline, and so we went to negotiate, and D.R. Horton said no. So then we canceled the contract, and I kept my earnest money.
Cool.
So if you kind of map that out in your mind as a brand new home buyer, you're getting it under contract. That's the start of the contract. Then you have due diligence where you're really evaluating crime rate, work schedule or drive times, location, everything like schools is a big one, typically for kids. And usually more wives will pick that out, that's what my wife did. And then once you get into financing and appraisal, that's all about the appraisal, figuring out if it will appraise, getting it actually done and submitted. But the other key piece to the financing and appraisal is the financing part. So typically a lender is going to run all of your credit, payment history, everything that you need to look good on paper so that you can actually purchase this home.
Yeah.
We need to get the loan all the way done and appraisal before the end of that financing and appraisal deadline to protect your earnest money.
Okay.
Now, a lot of times lenders do a good job to do that, but sometimes they don't, right? Just some lenders are not that good. The lenders that we have in our back pocket, they're all good.
Sweet.
They can get it done before the financing and appraisal deadline if the borrower, you, bring all your documents to the lender in time.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes it's a catch-22 there, right? Like a lender can only go as fast as the borrower.
Yeah.
So let's say we get it all done, financing appraisal, it's all good, $500,000 or 501 if it appraised. And then we have the closing or settlement deadline. So the settlement deadline obviously is when everybody's going to close, go to the table, sign, and get keys once it's recorded.
Okay.
So as a first-time home buyer, a lot of times people think that once they sign all their documents, that they get keys at the table because that's what we see on TV.
Yeah.
That's not how it works. Sadly to say, unless you're closing with like Edge Homes at their preferred title company with their preferred lender, then you'll get keys right after you sign.
That's crazy.
I know, right? Which is kind of nuts. And getting the keys like at closing or when you're going to sign before funding and recording is really not a great place to be in.
Yeah.
But Edge takes all the liability for that because they know if you're closing with their preferred title company and preferred lender that most likely it's going to go through.
Yeah.
99.99% of the time.
Yeah.
The only thing that would really kind of hiccup that, and I've had this happen before, is a borrower opens a new line of credit.
Nice.
Sometime during the deal.
Like, hey, I'm going to buy a new car real quick.
I swear to God, that's how it happens, man.
Yeah.
And so we really typically, with every buyer, have a really strong conversation about don't open anything new unless your lender knows.
What would the time frame for that be? So, like, say I wanted a new car and a new house.
Yep, perfect. Good. This is a great question. So in normal circumstances, you shouldn't open up a new line of credit until we've funded and recorded. Because once we've recorded and it's on the books, there's no going back. Like the bank is done, all the wiring is done, your name is on the title. Then you can go get a new car.
Okay. So what if I'm really dumb and I buy a car and then I come to you the next day and I'm like, hey, I want a house too. Would you say, well, let's wait, or what would your process be for that?
That's a great question. So we'd go to the lender and they would just look at it.
Just see what it is.
Yep, because your debt to income might be able to withhold that.
Yeah.
Or be able to handle that. The thing that gets tricky is debt to income is this floating number based on revolving credit and how many actual payments you have going out.
Yeah.
And then if your income's not as steady, maybe it's flexible like a 1099 or like mine's really like this most of the time. If it's like that, that's when it gets really tricky.
Gotcha.
So in my opinion, like what I would coach you to do is try not to open anything new. And then when we get ready to purchase a home, then we'd talk to the lender and really hammer that out. Let's say you really wanted to get a new car. We just talk to the lender, kind of go over it.
Yeah.
The thing is, a lot of people are really scared to go to a lender because they don't want their credit pulled, right? Like they think that dings their credit and it's going to rocket down.
Yeah.
Talking to the lender is free, by the way. Like we can always talk to a lender for free. They can run your numbers for free. They don't get paid until we close, right? They're kind of like a realtor. They have to complete the task to get paid.
Okay.
So a lot of times I love to take people to lenders to get a good game plan.
Yeah.
Because they might be able to say, hey, this is going to help your credit. We maybe need to build credit. They may want to see 2 credit cards paid off, right? And they'll tell you which ones to pay off.
Okay.
So there's a lot of cool things that happen with lenders that are good where they can really coach you on like a 6-month game plan. I've got buyers right now that were on 3-year game plans because they either had bankruptcies that happened or whatever happened in their lives, just circumstances do happen.
Yeah.
And then we kind of work through that. So long story short, get recorded before you open up any new lines. I have had wives go out and blow money at like RC Willey.
Oh yeah.
On a new RC Willey card like the day of closing. And I'm like, their debt to income's got to hold this, because like typically the husband's already set up movers and they're ready with a truck and maybe like some elders quorums or like pack them up or whatever, and so those get really kind of dicey.
Yeah.
So anyway, those are good questions though. So always try to get funded and recorded. Okay. Then you can actually kind of just be safe and be good.
Yeah.
The other thing that kind of happens, people may not love their job and they might be in a contract to purchase a home.
Yeah.
Just don't quit your job till it's recorded.
Yeah.
Yeah. But quit your job after it's recorded, no problem. Like then switch jobs. But I've had people that would like cut and like quit their job on the day of closing.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, you can't buy the house now because they actually recheck if you're employed with the same employer right before they fund.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. They do a credit check. They check your employment. They check all of the docs that everybody's signing. Yeah. And make sure it's all good before they fund and record.
Good to know.
Yeah. All right. So real quick, the wrap up on the contract deadlines. Starting of the contract is the start date for that contract. Then due diligence, that golden bubble protects you. Then financing and appraisal really is the key to making sure your finances look good, making sure that the home appraises. If we have to negotiate, we can in there. Yeah. And then the settlement deadline is the being done with the entire contract. So really quick to keep in your mind, Start of the contract to settlement is typically 30 days.
Okay.
For almost any type of loan, they can really be pushed faster, but that doesn't leave a lot of room for error or negotiations.
Yeah.
If we have to. So I love to do a 30-day contract. So that'd be 2 weeks for due diligence, another week for financing and appraisal. So about 3 weeks to really get your finances in order, talk about, credit, payments, and everything like that.
Okay.
And then settlement is about day 30. The real key to that too is that once you're settled, everything is signed, closed, and funded and recorded. That's when you can get keys.
Okay.
Something to keep in mind as a buyer, though, is that the seller might need a week to move. So possession of the house might happen 1 week after settlement.
Okay.
I have seen as long as 45 to 50 days of possession.
Okay.
Maybe they were getting ready to move out of state, or maybe it was an investor buying a home and there was still a tenant living in there and they had like 40 more days on their contract, on their lease.
Yeah.
Then maybe that's the case. So really, there's a lot of fine points about the contract, and any realtor that's worth their weight in salt will be able to identify the needs of their buyer and be able to point those out in the contract so that you stay safe and legal.
Okay.
Let's see. What questions do you might have about the home buying process? Because I know I just kind of like unloaded, and typically like I never unload that much. This would have been like 4 to 5 like times
different
being
conversations.
together. Yeah, different conversations.
No, I think you hit it pretty well. Gosh, I don't even know. Like, there's not really a whole lot of questions that I have.
Yeah,
I don't know. What are typical questions that people ask?
So a lot of questions that do come up are all about interest rates. So we kind of hit that at the first. Okay. Then number 2 kind of type of question that comes up is if they can see homes before they get a pre-approval letter.
Right. Okay.
There are a lot of realtors that will not take people out showing homes without a pre-approval letter.
Yeah.
And so I've been on both sides of that argument before, where it was like, oh, hard and fast, you got to have a pre-approval letter. Otherwise, I'm not going to work with you. Mm-hmm. Well, that's just too hard in my opinion. Like, it's too hard-nosed to be like, no, you've got to see a lender first.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have to get you to a lender before we know where your purchase price is, if you're really capable of purchasing a home. But like I said, sometimes you need a little like excitement to go want to have that conversation. So in my opinion, like, you really want to travel that with your buyer. Mm-hmm. So like for my entire team, I would say feel your buyer out. Yeah. If you get weird vibes, take them to get a pre-approval letter with a lender. But for me, like, I show homes with my friends, until they're like, yep, I'm ready to buy. Then we do pre-approval, no problem. Then we're done.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I will be able to know where they're at in life in general to see what price range we're at. Like, I just have a good vibe or, a natural kind of instinct about where they're looking and if that feels right. Obviously, like, if a buyer came to me off the street and they were like, I want to see a $3 million home, and I was like, you might need a pre-approval letter. Yeah. Or show me the cash, right? Because most loans won't go that high. Yeah. So you can't even get a pre-approval letter sometimes in those cases. So you would need to say, like, show me a bank statement or something like that. I'd do some due diligence on them.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Really fast, for first-time home buyers, there is a Utah grant that goes up to $20,000 of first-time home buyer assistance to help with down payments. Okay. So that's something that I would say to first-time home buyers out there. So you might be only needing to do 1% of the purchase price, and then up to $20,000, I think, goes for the other 2.5%. Okay. So 3.5% is almost the bare minimum for an FHA loan. Yeah. Something really quick for buyers out there, first-time home buyers, FHA just means government funding and government backing. It doesn't mean first-time home buyer. There's plenty of programs that are just government funding, like hundreds of ways to get a loan, and they're bottled up in saying FHA.
Gotcha.
Right? So if you're a first-time home buyer, you don't have to say, like, I'm a first-time home buyer and I need this FHA program. They might put you in there, but they might put you into a conventional loan. There's so many ways to slice the pie, and that's the lender's job.
Gotcha. Okay.
Something that I like to do really quick for first-time home buyers or just buyers in general, and this is something that I love to tell new buyers is to put in their back of their mind is that when they finish looking at a house, I kind of prompt them, what was that out of 10? Was it a 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10? And on the backs of my MLS forms, usually when I'm walking around with buyers, I'll just write like a quick note about where they were. But it is those things that you find in a home that you hate. Those are the things that are going to jump out at you. So. Yeah. Anyway, thanks so much.
Of course.
Yeah, that was awesome.